Welcome on my first step ever. So far, we have had such amazing conversations all across the globe, and the uniqueness of this podcast is that we get to discover and uncover the journeys of people who have built conviction in themselves, in their lives, and have taken the steps, the actionable steps to get to what they really wanted and define the successes the way they wanted and taken the first steps how many ever times in their life, because yes, we keep growing, we keep reinventing, we keep evolving, but the the first step towards any new journey that we take is always a little bit daunting, a little bit scary. Even with experience, there's something new when we do. We have that, butterflies in our stomach. And how we get to the first steps of any new journey is always interesting. So today, very interestingly, on this podcast, we are going to continue the conversation with a previous guest speaker. If you have not heard that so far, go back and listen to the previous episode, which is with this amazing, amazing speaker, Getrude Matshe. And when you know her story, that how she created a life of her own from Africa to now in New Zealand, you would come to know the kind of amazing, amazing choices, the decisions, the tough decisions that she has made, and where we have come here. So, to give you a quick summary, or maybe a quick recap, we know that Getrude is an amazing TEDx speaker, international speaker, and she has held multiple businesses. But was she always a business owner? Well, you need to get to know about all that in the previous episode, so you really know that what challenging conditions once denied entry into New York in the US, and now she has a thriving business in New Zealand. Also, she's one of these amazing actresses who've had the chance to act with amazing, really famous, very famous actors. I'm not going to tell who, but you want to go and listen to in the previous episode. So today we are continuing from what we left in the last episode. That is, after Gertrude was able to build multiple businesses in recruiting, in casting, and even real estate. Yes, you heard that right. Now we're going to get a little bit one step further, because she has done such amazing things in her life that one chat was just not enough. So before we go further, I would like to first welcome Getrude Matshe once again on the virtual studios of my first step ever. Welcome, Getrude.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yes, and so soon. I really wanted to kind of cover the second half of your journey, as I believe you've had many, many amazing first in your life, which is really, really interesting. And let's get started off with this amazing journey of yours. Now, you are in New Zealand, you have built multiple businesses for yourself, which is doing really well. And in every business, you have not just taking yourself forward in terms of a person, professional, grooming yourself and improving yourself, but you have actually taken an entire tribe forward. The Africans and minorities, you represent them and you put them in the right place for their employment or for people to show their talent, skills, and even with real estate. So from that, Gertrude, I would love to know that before we segue into this amazing journey of yours, HerStory Circle, when you were handling these multiple businesses, what were you feeling about yourself at that point in time? What did you think about yourself at that point in time?
It's been interesting being able to explore the different aspects of my talents. My mother said I was ADHD, I just wasn't medicated. So I was one of those little kids just running around like a headless chicken, so many ideas. And I read a book called Refuse to Choose when I decided to go into business. It was a story of a young woman who had young children, wanted to go into business, and everybody kept saying, why don't you wait until the children grow up? And she refused to choose. So I followed that path and I haven't looked back. I just wanted to make sure that every gift I had, I got to use it before I check out of this life, I guess.
Amazing. Gertrude, I do have a quick question. It's interesting that you brought up that Refuse to Choose is the kind of a book that you read, because we always we grow up with the idea of choosing one single profession and then just continuing in that forever and putting that label on us, that this is what we are supposed to do. Even from your earlier days, while you were in Africa and you were trying to find a new life in the US, you went touring the US and selling your art, kind of, you knew the artist that it was in you. So you wanted to go and create a business out there as well. So definitely there was a bit of, I would say that bug of, an entrepreneur over there. You could sense the kind of talent that you have. You can sense what would really help and either help people out there fill the gap, or something that you can be of help to or add value, and you could make business out of it. But when you did, finally settle down in New Zealand and you started finding gaps in the recruitment industry, and then you had your first business and you had a real estate business, there were so many different industries that you set yourself up, and that too successfully. How did you get that confidence that no, I don't want to stop in just being really good in one industry, but I can actually step in different industries? And given that all these industries have been very different, how did that happen for you?
I think I just grew up with the belief that as a human being, if you feel the urge to do something, you already have the knowledge that you need to make it happen. So no two people have the same desire, the same aspiration, the same interests. So we are born with certain gifts, and if you take time to explore what your gifts are, you can create a magical life. And I think it also comes from my parents and the way they live their lives. My mother was a nurse, but she was also an entrepreneur. So you grow up seeing the role models around you who are showing you that you can be multifaceted. And that's what I decided to follow.
I believe, I think because I've had the opportunity to interview you for a previous episode, I exactly know your foundation, your upbringing, and I know where this stems from. The thought itself that you can create the reality of whatever you think in your head. And that was something that your father once told you. So, yes, listeners, if you find this so amazing, that how can one person just tap into different fields and make the best out of every business that the person is, how can they do it? Well, the answer lies in the previous episode. So please do go and check it out. How was Getrude growing up, the kind of foundation she had, the kind of mindset she was building, what did her parents impart to her, in terms of the kind of mindset one needs to have. And that's what is being reflected now in this journey of her today, when we are chatting, that she has that confidence that I am not here to be straight jacketed in one way in life. And even with different phases in her life as she was growing, she has actually you know I think tried and achieved everything that she wanted to do while she was growing up. She has done acting, and she's done that with some really good actors. She has had amazing entrepreneurship experience so far with leading these businesses. But then, there has been a theme. Theme in this is, when you came to New Zealand, you have tried kind of bringing the tribe together and helping them, expose them to the opportunities, being the bridge, being the gap. How did that start to translate into your very foundation of Her Story Circle?
So not everything in my life has gone according to plan. There's been ups, there's been downs. I don't want to give the impression that everything has been a success. So I actually went through a very traumatic divorce in 2015, collapsing with congestive heart failure from the stress. I lost everything I worked for 23 years, and I was living in my car in 2015. And I did a post that went viral on Facebook where I just posed the question, how many people find themselves broken emotionally, spiritually, and financially, and having to start life all over again? This is my story. In 48 hours, 2,500 women responded to that post from 15 countries. One person saying I ended up with breast cancer, another woman saying I had a stroke. And I thought, this is a more common occurrence for women over 50. What if I created a community where women can support each other? We can heal through the telling of our stories. So in Zimbabwe, you don't have psychologists, you don't have psychiatrists. If anything happens to a woman, the counseling comes from the women in her community. And I didn't have that living in New Zealand and now here in Australia. But I created a virtual community and started coaching women how to share their stories. I started having in-person events just before COVID. And it has turned out to be the most incredible thing I've ever done. It started off with 100 women who came to meet me in Las Vegas. That's where I launched. And everyone had to bring 10 friends. So we had 1,000 women at our first event. Second event was in Wellington, New Zealand. Third was in Sydney, Australia. Fourth was in Oslo, Norway. Fifth was in London. The sixth was in New York. And COVID happened while I was in New York. When all the alarms went off, I was running an event in New York. So I had to cancel all of my plans for the first quarter of 2020. And then during COVID, we put the platform online. And we scaled to 50,000 women in 18 months during the pandemic because we were pushing out positive, inspiring messages and stories every day. The community has now grown to almost 180,000 women in 45 countries. And it's just been the most incredible thing I've ever done. So her story is a pun on the word history. We are writing women's stories into history.
I love that, Getrude, and I like to just make a note over here that everyone who's watching and listening to us, I'm a little under the weather, so please bear with me. But coming back to Getrude's story, Gertrude, I am really excited to know, that what you've created for yourself, like how you say, that blessing in disguise, or finding the best out of the worst. I think you have that ability, to be able to push through life, to make the most out of the most challenging situation. And I know this is not happening for the very first time, although this might have hit you very differently. It's a very personal loss, as you mentioned. But even earlier times in your life when you were having the most toughest challenges, you still were able to find some sort of help to actually, when you were denied entry in the US, and then everything kind of shattered because you had given up all your savings to buy the airfare, as you mentioned, you still had an opportunity, or maybe an idea that was shared by one of your well-wisher, and you just acted upon it. And that's what I see, you have that to reinvent yourself, or to be able to make the most out of the challenges. How you mentioned, you've been traveling the world, you've been doing these meetups in person. For people who are listening to us, and who want to get into the business, what I first like to kind of understand, when we are doing such meetups in person, which was definitely before COVID, how does one, I'm getting into a little bit the details of the business part of the things, that how does one really think about funding these in-person meetups, if you can take us through that?
Well, I created a model that's called a pay-to-play platform. Women come to my events because they want to get access to me, get access to my mentoring and my coaching. So they actually pay, and they go through a training program where I groom them, I coach them, and I am trying to build a platform that will one day compete with TED Talks, but that is strictly focused on women. So I've hacked how to get on TED 3 times. I know how to tell a powerful, impactful story and to create an idea that can spread. So that's what my community are coming to me for. So it became easy to fund, to pay for the venues, to pay for the food when we have in-person events, because the following are the ones who are helping to fund it. So we're kind of co-creating the experience together.
Love that. So you with all these experiences in your life and the kind of skills that you had built and the confidence you had in that, you offered value in advance, and that helped you kind of, sort of sponsor these events for them for to benefit them in person. So while we move from those in-person meetups to the virtual, before we do that, I like to understand what really worked the best or well for you in the in-person setup that you would still cherish in those couple of experiences or years that you had.
There's nothing like being in the same physical space as other human beings. There's a certain energy that you cannot quite get when you're online. And what's really magical for me is hearing the stories afterwards of the women who met at my events and now they've collaborated, they've started a business together, they've started doing something in coaching together. That's what really lifts me when I hear the results. And as a social impact movement, we normally try and find a project that we can sponsor as a group. So we find women in marginalized communities. Women and children are our priority, and the disabled, and now the elderly as well. So it's the ripple effect of the work when you look back 3, 4, 5 years later and you see the help that you gave 5 years ago and the impact it has now. That's really what lifts me up as a social impact movement.
Absolutely. And I think so well put over there, that you if you have never had that experience, I think it's worth having that experience, that when you help someone, even with the slightest of the thing, that actually makes your day. Even if our listeners or people are watching us today, even if like you are in a public transport and you probably just give your seat up for an elderly, if you would like to, their smile, the satisfaction, it just helps you make feel better. I mean, this is the smallest thing, the tiniest thing that you can do that is in your control, that doesn't require a lot of investment of any kind. But the feeling that you get with such tiny actions, just imagine the kind of feeling that Getrude is talking about by actually helping someone build that kind of confidence in themselves, that they're going out and actually building a life of their own. This must be really amazing, Gertrude. So from moving on to these in-person events that you did, do you remember any one incident in this entire in-person meetups before you move to the virtual world that really stays with you even thus far?
Oh my gosh, there's been so many. Um, I remember I met a woman in the United States in Washington, D.C., who came to my event. And she had been abducted as a little girl from a playground and brought up by a drug dealer. And this man abused her, raped her. She ended up getting pregnant and having a child. And to escape, she ended up shooting him and she killed him when she was about 18. And she was put in prison. So I met her when she was in her late 50s. She had just come out of prison. Very, very sad story. But what this woman managed to do with her life, it just shows you the resilience of the human spirit. Somebody who should have been broken, and she's still going. She's still going. We are trying to help her write her book so she can tell her story, trying to help her find work. But a lot of women go through so much at the hands of their abusers. And she was punished for killing him. Just that was the only way she could think to escape. There's so many of these kind of stories that we come across. Inspires me is what those people are able to do afterwards. So I guess the lesson I learned from these kind of experiences is that the only constant in life is change. Nothing stays the same. In life, there will always be ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. And the choice you get as a human being is to decide how long you stay down when you do hit rock bottom. So I get excited now if I'm going through something and things go wrong and I feel like this is the lowest I've been for a long time. I get excited because the only way from there is up.
This is quite intense, I think, Gertrude, the kind of experience that you have shared. And you're absolutely true, I think even to hear what you've shared, and you're right, I think anyone would have just broken down. Either they might not survive because of the emotional turmoil that they might have been through, but she didn't. And how, I think this is a very challenging situation, a very great situation to be in, very very extreme situation. But this does show us that, that even when everything wrong happened to her, she chose life, she chose to survive in whatever way that she could think at that point in time. So I think when you meet such people and then you see that if they can fight so much to live, how or why we must complain about the kind of challenges that we have. Of course, I don't take away the degree of challenges that people face. Every degree of the challenge is different for everyone, and whatever they're facing it's not small or big. We are not here to compare the challenges that someone is facing, but it's the spirit that we are talking about that we can learn from someone else if we are not able to find that within ourselves. So thank you so much for actually creating such a community, for bringing such stories out there, because you think that, oh my god, there's so much that I can learn just about the human resilience. So coming from there, when you did hit um, a snag in this amazing journey that you were on, how did it really hit you when you were, in the early COVID times, the physical meetup stopped? Did it take some time for you to, come terms to that, to kind of switch to the online world, or were you quick enough to, navigate your way?
No, it took time because I had a string of personal tragedies happen around the time as well. I lost my father. My father died of a sudden heart attack while I was in Africa visiting my parents. And then I lost my mum on the 28th of March, 2020. My daughter had a miscarriage of my first grandchild 2 weeks after my mother died. So I had to stop. I just had to stop and grieve and just be still for a while. And I remember waking up in a dream in November 2020. And in this dream, I was brushing my teeth and I spat into the sink. And when I looked up into the mirror, the picture looking back at me wasn't me, it was my mother. And in this dream, she was healthy and vibrant and laughing. And she said, "Do you see, baby? Do you see what I did?" I'm like, "Mom, where are you? What are you talking about?" She said, "I made you look like me so that you will remember I have not gone anywhere. I am in you, I am with you, but you need to get up and finish the work that you started. There are women and children who are waiting for you to help them." And it was an interesting dream because it was almost like I just snapped out of the state of depression. And that's when I put the platform online, and I have not looked back since. So they say that our emotions are like our children. When they come, sometimes you just have to sit with it for a while, because the more you try and resist and fight the feeling, the more it comes. If you are still, it passes through you. You have to give them your time. If they were your kids, you wouldn't push them away. You would pull them towards you and comfort them. So that's what I learned to do from that experience.
This is a new learning and a great takeaway, Gertrude, from what you have shared just now. And I was going to kind of, reinforce on the fact that I really appreciate the fact that you said that I took some time off to grieve. This is so important. And if you run away from your emotions, as you mentioned, you're not healing from it, and you're not able to kind of, get back to your better self or an evolved self to, go ahead with your life in the next phase of your life. Because a lot of things that happen, in our surroundings with our loved ones, they change us in many ways. And sometimes if we sit still, if we grieve, if we listen, if we reflect, if we heal, we find that we have actually taken on something positive from that, something better, and we have evolved in a better way to kind of help people around or even ourselves from here. I would love to understand, when you did get back on this virtual platform, the new version of you. And as on this podcast, what we discuss is the behind the scenes of the first steps, because that is the most important. So this would be like your sixth, seventh, or the eighth first step of the journey of your life. How were you feeling then? Were you confident? Did you have butterflies? Were you making any mistakes at the end that you were learning from? What were the behind the scenes you would love to understand when her story circle went online?
What I knew is I had to keep showing up. There were days when I really didn't want to do it. I was dealing with people on different time zones, so it means I'm waking up early in the morning or sleeping late at night. But I knew that I was the curator of these stories, and I had to be there to hold space for the women who were stepping up and allow their stories to breathe. I wasn't making any money in the beginning. I didn't know how to monetize it, but I showed up because I had the internet, I had a computer, and I had a lot of time on my hands because of COVID. And it paid off because the brand grew. The women started sending out links whenever they were online. They became my advocates that kept this movement going at a very difficult time. And I'm very, very grateful to every woman who stepped up so far to tell her story.
And I think kudos to you, because I think from what you experienced in that time, you did take a step forward to, put yourself out there. It is definitely not easy as it, sounds in a conversation like this, that this happened, that happened, or you worked on it and then you moved on. So thank you so much for, sharing every bits and detail life, and how you have that resilience to bounce back every time something goes really wrong. And when I say wrong, it actually is a personal loss, or a really life threatening situations, which I have come across in your journey, as you have mentioned. And it just shows me how you bounce back and what you think out of it. So when you are in that, whenever you are in that phase so far in your life, when you have faced the darkest or the lowest point in your life, what is that mindset that you carry when you're actually tipping yourself away from that to the next move? How do you make that work for our listeners, if you can share?
I think I've come to believe that so long as I'm 6 feet above the ground, my job isn't done. I will rest when I die. And it's taking little steps that don't make any sense sometimes. It's reaching out to random strangers on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot to grow the community. I had a lot of rejections. And I guess my attitude is the people who I am supposed to work with will show up. So when I get a no, it doesn't faze me. It's like, she's just not supposed to be part of this tribe. Let me try the next one and the next one. And they say that how did the ant eat the elephant? It was one bite at a time. So you take little steps in the direction of where you're trying to go. And then you look back 7 years later, you have a huge community that follows you. And you think, wow, how did I do that?
I love this, Gertrude. How you take everything one step at a time, and that is the crux of it. So I think for everyone who's watching us today or listening us from all across the globe, from the different phases of their life, stages of their life, the key is to keep moving on. And I think that's the theme of your life, because when I hear your story from the very beginning, from your childhood to where you have come thus far, you have faced numerous challenges. And I think to the people who are listening to us today, if they reflect on their journey, they would also understand that they have also faced numerous challenges. All of us do face. But it's the spirit of you that keep moving on, or not, getting stuck or brooding in your low phase for a really long time. That's the only thing that helps you go to the next, phase of your life. That's the only way that you can keep going ahead gracefully in your life, because anyways you will be spending that time on earth, whatever time that you have. But if you can keep moving on with either evolving from what you have dealt with, or healed from what you've dealt with, or learned from what you dealt with. It would only help you make your life even much better, bigger in many different ways. So thank you so much, Getrude, for being on my first step ever once again. And I'm so glad that we could actually delve a little bit more deeper and give the time that this part of your story really deserves in this part two version of your journey. So before we do take your leave, I do want to ask that at present, what are you doing with Her Story Circle? Because sustaining is also not that easy. It's been about like almost 5 years now when it probably went viral. So please let us know that what are you doing at present at Her Story Circle?
So right now we are putting together a list of speakers who are going to be presenting online from the 21st to the 31st of August. So every single day, we're going to have 10 speakers sharing their stories. We've got 100 women who stepped up to do that. And we are hoping that with some of the proceeds that we get from there, we can sponsor a few of the organizations that we want to help women that we see who are in poverty and make a difference there. So that's where our focus is right now.
This is exciting. And I think for people who are interested to get in touch with Getrude, just become a part of the community, just hear more stories, the like-minded stories or similar stories. And this thing really helps, when you're able to share, or even if you don't want to share, and if you hear someone else share a story which you can relate with, somewhere in your heart, it gives you that bit of a confidence. A similar thing has happened with so many people, and this is how they have got out of it. It's even I could do it probably, but the small steps really help. So I will leave the links in the show notes below. Definitely reach out to Getrude anywhere you're any part of the world. The great thing is that it's all virtual now. And yes, if you have something to add to this Her Story Circle, definitely get in touch with Getrude. So Getrude, thank you so much for being on the first step ever. It has been such an amazing journey having this conversation with you, not just today, but even the previous conversation. And that was quite, I think, an eye opener for me in terms of, the situation that you were born in, the place that you were, the kind of experiences that you were dealing with while growing in apartheid Africa, as you mentioned, and then how you really created a life of your own for your kids at 19, the kind of amazing opportunity that you got to act, but while being pregnant, you've defined a lot of, a lot of conventional things just because you had the confidence in your decisions, or you were taking responsibility of your decisions, and then you started creating a life of your own, coming to New Zealand, having multiple businesses, and now the Her Story Circle after going through such personal loss. This just is a great example of how a life really looks like, and it's all only worth living when you are able to keep moving forward. So before we take your leave, please leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that you really resonate with once again.
I think I'll leave you with this. I can't remember where I heard this. Learning to be present. The magic happens in the moment of life. When you focus on your past, you get depressed because you're focusing on things that have happened that you can't go back and change. When you get anxious about the future, you're focusing on things that may or may not happen. It's only this moment, living in the now and being very, very aware that this is where the magic happens. So don't get too distracted and get pulled back into your past. Don't get too anxious about what might or might not happen in the future. Be in the now.
I love this.
Thank you.
I love this, Getrude, because I think the younger you are, you're more anxious because you have a lot of years left to live.
Yeah.
But the older you are, then you're grieving the past because it's many years that you have lived. But yes, it's so important to be in the present that you can actually change the course of your life anytime that you want with the actions you take in the present. So thank you so much, Getrude, for being with us, sharing your life with us. I can't even say a part of life. I think there's a lot that we have covered on this podcast. It has really inspired me for sure, having this conversation. And I'm very sure anyone who's listening to us today would definitely have. So, for all my listeners out there, as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you until next time with another amazing story of self belief, conviction, and people who have taken the actionable steps and define the success the way they want to. So, thank you so much once again, Getrude, for being on my first step ever.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.